Port forwarding or port mapping is the forwarding of a TCP/IP packet in a network address translator gateway to a predetermined port on a host within a private network. Based on the port number of which it was received from the originating host, this technique is used to permit communications by external hosts with services provided within a private network. In other words, if you have a network device located on your local area network and you wish to share that device with others through TCP/IP protocol outside of your local area network, you must configure port forwarding on your router device. For this training purpose, we will simulate configuring port forwarding for a local IP camera in Paris, France, and making that camera available across the World Wide Web to users in Texas. This will be made possible by configuring port forwarding in virtual server using an Intellinet router. In order to configure port forwarding, you must log on to the interface of your Intellinet router. From the home page of the Intellinet router, you will select General Setup. After choosing General Setup, you will be presented with full menus on the left-hand side of your screen. These menus include System, your wide area setup, your local area network setup, your wireless configuration, the QoS configuration, NAT, firewall, and the failover configuration on this particular router. You will then choose NAT, which is for Network Address Translator. After you select NAT, you will be presented with several other options. The first option, port forwarding, virtual server, special applications, UPnP settings, and ALG settings. For this example, we will start off by making sure that we have the NAT module enabled. Then we will select virtual server to configure our camera to be viewed by others on the World Wide Web. The first option we will discuss is a virtual server. You can configure virtual server so that remote users accessing services such as web or FTP at your local site via a public IP address can be automatically redirected to a local server within your private network. In other words, depending on the requested service, whether it's TCP or UDP, the wireless router redirects the external traffic to a local IP address on your local area network. Virtual server is the option to choose if you have one internal port to use. In this example, we will forward port 1024 of our IP camera at local IP address 192.168.10.55. We will forward the port of this IP camera to be viewable by users outside of our local area network. Under private IP, we will put the IP address of the IP camera. Computer name will leave as the default select. The port that we will forward will be port 1024. We will choose the public port of 1024, and for type, you have the option of choosing TCP or UDP. However, we will leave it at the default of both. Once you input this information, it is always a good practice to input the name of the item that you are configuring for port forwarding. In this case, it's the IP camera network fixed camera 30. After inputting the information, you will choose Add, and then on the bottom of the screen, you will see the virtual server port forwarding table that you have created. And you see on this selection, you have number 1, the private IP again is 192.168.10.55. The private port is 1024. The type TCP plus UDP will be redirected from port 1024 public port, the common IP camera NFC 30. After you have verified that these settings are correct, you would click apply and apply once again. The second option of allowing users outside of your local area network to connect to a camera or other device within your network is located under the NAT tab under the function port forwarding. This will allow any public traffic to be redirected to a specific IP address in your local network. In this instance, we again are showing the example of forwarding our IP camera NFC 30 to port 1024 from outside of our local area network. You will select Enable Port Forwarding, enter the private IP address of 192.168.10.55. You can skip over the computer name, and the type we will choose both. The port range for this IP camera is port 1024, and we will choose 1024 to 1024 in order to forward a single port for this particular camera. After we have verified our input, we will select Add. After we select Add, the port that we just configured will show up in the current port forwarding table. As you see, we have forwarded private IP address 192.168.10.55 through port 1024 for public access to the internal network IP camera NFC 30. You would then select Apply and apply once again to successfully save your settings. After you select Apply the second time, your router will be rebooted. Once the router is up and running again, you will now have a IP camera located at your location in Paris, France, in this example, and users from all over the world will be able to access your camera from, for instance, Texas in the United States and other areas by connecting to your public IP address through your router and using the port forwarding settings that you configured to view the output of your camera in Paris, France. As you see here, the users have entered your public IP address, which in this case is 173.165.119.39. However, you see the colon of 1024, the public IP address followed by the colon of 1024 redirects that traffic to your internal IP address that we entered earlier. The key here is to recognize that port 1024 is the internal port that you allow public users to connect through. And now you're able to view your live camera over the World Wide Web. As a recap, in order to allow public users to view a IP camera over the World Wide Web into your local area network, you must go through a process called port forwarding. Using the Intellinet router, you will simply connect to the interface of your router, choose General Setup, then you would choose NAT, and use one of the two options for port forwarding, either the virtual server feature or the port forwarding feature. You would then take your local area network IP address and the port of the assigned camera and forward that port for public use by users on the public internet. Once you input that into your port forwarding, save the configurations on your router. Public users will now be able to view your camera through the use of Internet Explorer or any other web browser across the World Wide Web. Thank you, and please contact your Intellinet sales rep for all of your IP camera needs.